So I've got the Honeyball Sutta, Majjhima 18. So I guess it's like, I think about 3 key bits. So I'll just maybe read out those main bits.
Yeah, let's start with the first one.
So, so basically, the Buddha's gone somewhere and encounters a layman, Sakyan Dandapani. Dandapani asks the Buddha, the ascetic is one who says what? One who declares what? And the Buddha responds, friend, one who says in such a way that one stands having disputed with nobody in the world, with its gods, maras and brahmas, with its ascetics and brahmins, with this generation of gods and humans, and also in such a way that, dwelling detached from sense desires, that Brahman is free from doubt, has cut remorse, without craving for this or that existence, perceptions are not underlying.
It's talking about an arahant. Like, how do you stop disputing with Mara? By taking up what belongs to Mara. Means by completely removing any appropriation and ownership in regard to your own eye and sights, nose and smells and so on. So it's the mind completely developed, removed of any traces of greed, aversion, delusion. So then it's inconceivable to have a dispute internally, let alone externally, with other people and so on. So it doesn't actually refer to just dispute. It's much more than that.
Sort of any conflict.
Yeah, any discrepancy.
Yeah.
You're free from. And yeah, dispute is a discrepancy, the common sense dispute. But the way they use it, it's quite clear that it applies even to on the level of that internal sense bases that belong to Mara. And you're disputing with Mara by claiming the ownership over those things. And that's a discrepancy.
So the Buddha finishes and says, friend, I'm one who says this, I'm one who declares this.
Yeah, the ultimate goal.
So the Buddha then leaves. Do you have a question about that particular bit, or
no, I'm much further.
Okay. So then the Buddha goes away and speaks to the bhikkhus and tells them about his encounter with Dandapani. And in response to that, one of the bhikkhus says, but Bhante, the Buddha is one who says what, such that he stands having disputed with nobody in the world, with its gods, maras, brahmas, ascetics and brahmins, with this generation of gods and humans. And also, how is it that the Buddha, dwelling detached from sense desires, is that Brahman who is free from doubt, has cut remorse, without craving for this or that existence, and perceptions are not underlying. So the Bhikkhu the Buddha responds, says, Bhikkhu, for what reason are proliferated perceptions and concepts in play for a man? If there isn't anything to delight in, to welcome, to attach to here, just this is the end of the underlying tendency to passion. Just this is the end of the underlying tendency to repulsion, the underlying tendency to views, the underlying tendency to doubt, conceit, the underlying tendency to for being, and the underlying tendency to ignorance. Just this is the end of taking up sticks, taking up swords, disputes, quarrels, arguments, criticism, slander, false speech. Here these evil unwholesome things cease without remainder.
Yeah, so it's not about the removal of the conflict, it's about the removal of the basis of conflict, necessary basis for any type of conflict, internally or externally. And the other thing I'll point out, the papanca, sanya, sankha, the proliferation or diversification, it's on the level of perception, as it clearly says that. It's not the result of your perception. In which case all you need to do is just stop engaging with the results of your perception and thinking you're somehow undoing papanca. So papanca is on the level of thing being perceived. That's why you undo papanca, you undo the being, you undo the craving for being and everything else. And by that I mean the meaning, significance, emotional value in regard to things that are being perceived, that's what papanca is. Dependence, your dependence on ownership is what papanca is. Because see, if I show you, I don't know, a watch, a random watch, you go, okay, it's a watch, but you don't feel anything towards it. So your perception, the meaning of that perception, the significance of it is, oh, this is not my watch, and I don't need the watch. But now, I show you a watch given to you by your granddad that he sort of survived 2 world wars and, you know, made you promise you're going to look after it, and you're emotional, it has so much significance to you. It's still the watch, it's still a watch, same perception of the same thing with same usefulness, but it means much, much more.
Yeah.
Has much more proliferated meaning, which means it has much more proliferated pressure on you, much more proliferated burden on you, much more proliferated being over you. And that's what papanca is.
And so taking that even further for an ordinary
Well,
person...
see, if somebody destroys the watch you don't care about, would you be upset with them? No.
Well, that's the thing.
If somebody comes and destroys the watch that you're emotionally engaged with, you will take up the rod and try to beat them up.
But what I mean is, even so, for an ordinary person, even if they see a watch that isn't mine,
they need to find other things that are theirs, and in order to undo their papanca.
Oh, okay.
Thinking about the watch is nothing to do with papanca.
Yeah, okay.
Thinking about things that mean a lot to you, that's already rooted in papanca, and will increase the significance. You know, you forget about your granddad, you stop thinking about him. But you won't be experiencing daily sadnesses and so on. But imagine you revolve around those things.
Yeah.
So that watch will be constant reminder of all the emotional significance you're going through. Yeah. So it's going to grow. Papanca will grow and increase. So I just gave the example of a random object in the world that can be meaningful or meaningless, but there are certain things that are always meaningful. Your life, your body, your being, your senses, your eyes, your nose, and that's already proliferated. Yeah. And if you wonder whether it is or not, well, would you be concerned, would you suffer, would you experience mental anguish if you go blind? If you become disabled? Would you be emotionally disrupted on account of it? Yes, you would. So to that extent, the meaning of these things have proliferated into your own being, so to speak. You are it. And you're responsible for that proliferation. That's not in things. No. Perception is in things, so to speak. Perceiving the watch, perceiving things with your eyes, that's it.
Yeah, you find perception.
As the Buddha said, in the scene, there is just the scene. And for an arahant, in the scene, there will be just the scene. All the meaning, the pressure, the emotional connection, the ownership, the appropriation has been fully depleted, destroyed, removed. For an arahant.
Things are still meaningful.
Oh, well, things are still meaningful on the level of its own perception. And you would still have a memory that this watch used to be very important to me because it was given to me by a granddad. So the significance of things that's being perceived does not disappear. It's not like for an arahant, he doesn't know what watch is for. It's just that pressuring burden of the emotional significance has been now uprooted. But yes, this is still an important and extremely useful watch. An arahant might use it. And might even know it, that it's his granddad's watch. So that's when proliferation, the papanca side of things, it's not in things that you perceive, nor even their significance and their use and their intentionality.
Yeah, which that all remains.
That remains completely. And that's what Buddha said. If you remove the papanca, what's left is like a tree cut off at its root. So you remove the life of this growth, but what has been grown stays petrified. Like branches of a tree. And that's what people don't realize. So they immediately like jump in a conclusion like, oh, I must throw away my possessions. Oh, look, you have that phone. Oh, you must be attached to it. Attachment does not mean possession, so to speak. Things, the meaning of this is that it's mine, but the meaning of mine does not have to have an emotional influence over me. But that's much harder to discern. Because it's much easier to just throw away the phone, seemingly. And that's the self-mortification comes as a result of that attitude. I'll throw away my possession, I'll throw away my wealth, I throw away my clothes, I will throw away my eyes, I will destroy this body, and that's how I will reach enlightenment. No, that's utterly, utterly misguided, on the equal footing as going towards the sense object like sensuality is. Hence the middle way. So yeah, if somebody else randomly, as that man did, what's your teaching, that's exactly what the Buddha would describe. That is the teaching.
Could you say then the particular the removal of papanca is basically the removal of a whole sort of domain of meaning that's about
Well, let's put it in simpler terms. Removal of papanca is on the basis of things that have an emotional weight over you. So, and
you're
same,
moved by.
removal of atta, all these things, and that's again, that's what we keep mentioning in other talks. When there's the common view is like, oh look, everything is impermanent. No, that's unimportant. That's irrelevant. Whether everything is, things that are dear to you are the ones you need to contemplate for being impermanent. Things that will make you feel suffering if you lose them. And see, that's why people don't want to think about it. Even without losing things, just thinking about a possibility of losing things that are dear to you is already suffering. And that's what papanca is. It's that dearness of it increases the more you adhere to it. The less you question it, the more you refuse to look at it, it grows. Because the necessary basis for papanca growing is ignoring papanca. Ignoring the weight of this emotional significance that it has over me. Turning away from it because it's unpleasant. Ignoring your responsibility for it. Why? Because responsibility is unpleasant. So if you want to undo papanca, you need to find things that are dearest to you. And start cultivating perception of impermanence while those things are felt as dear to me. But before that, you need to practice sense restraint. Because otherwise you might go mad or overwhelmed with anxiety and fear. Fall on the ground, beat your breast and pull your hair, as the suttas describe.
And so if you're going to be contemplating the nature of the body, let's say, I think it's quite easy to forget how dear it is to you.
And that's what I mean. That's why I always
some abstract notion of a objective body.
That's why I always criticize this like meditation techniques and body sensations and watching, because it's impersonal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the necessary basis for practice, which is recognize the personal involvement, is completely taken away.
Yeah, exactly.
Repressed, removed, not acknowledged.
Yeah.
And why? Because it's unpleasant.
Yeah.
No, don't look at your knees and your shoulders and sensations. Look at the value that the body has for you.
Yeah.
Would I suffer if I die next 5 minutes? If I find out I might die next 5 minutes, will I experience anguish and fear? No amount of sensation will reveal that to you. That's all secondary to your first and foremost framework of your relationship with that body. So if you want to do a meditation technique, find the ways that your own body is dear to you and then question that by contemplating impermanence in regard to it. Not by denying, oh look, it's all impermanent, thus my idea of this is dear to me is a mistaken idea. Yes, from an arahant's point of view, it's a mistaken idea, because he has undone it. You haven't undone it, so it's a factual idea. The mistake is real as a mistake. And unless you start acknowledging it first, all you do is denying it. And that's why you'll never resolve it.
Okay, so after the Buddha says that, he goes off to his dwelling. It's one of those suttas where the bhikkhus are like, what did you mean by that?
And they didn't ask him.
And they didn't ask him. And they say, who should we ask? And they Mahakachana. He's good at doing this thing. He's always explaining in detail what the Buddha said in brief. Let's go and ask him. And then he reprimands them, saying, why didn't you ask the Buddha when you had the chance? But I understand. He says, I understand the meaning in detail of what the Buddha said in this way. So, friends, because of the eye and sight, eye consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is pressure.
Right. Let's rephrase that translation.
Okay.
Because of the eye and sights, consciousness is there.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness is manifested.
Yeah.
Because the idea of arising means somehow you can be aware of the process that precedes your consciousness of the process. And that's a contradiction in terms.
Upajjati.
So you are already conscious of the sights, means your eye is there, sights are there,
And
consciousness of
is
those
there.
things is there
Yeah.
with those things, not with you.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Uh-huh.
Because, eye meets the sights and then spark happens and that's consciousness.
Yeah, later.
As if you can even think that accurately because you're it. How's that possible?
Mm-hmm.
How can you be aware of the eye, pre-conscious eye, when the only way of being aware of something is being conscious of it?
Mm-hmm.
So when the description is given, it's not to explain the process,
No.
it's to just indicate the aspects of the necessary basis for your thoughts and perceptions and everything else on account of the sight.
It's the same principle of Paticca
Sure. Sure.
When there's this, there's this.
Yeah.
When there's eyes and sights, there's eye consciousness.
Yes, so eyes, sights, eye consciousness
Yeah.
simultaneously there.
When there's eye
Eyes
consciousness,
and sights
there's
is
eyes
just
and
two
sights.
ends of the same domain, so to
Mhm.
speak. So eyes and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And when is that?
Could-
There is the emotional pressure in regard to the scene.
You could say that eyes and sights is sort of on the level of rupa,
It is, yeah. Yeah.
and then eye consciousness. There's eye consciousness when there's that, and when the meeting of the three, there's
Yeah.
this
And that's the starting point, the pressure.
the pressure.
That's what I mean. So if
Yeah.
you ignore the fact that you're pressured by the emotionally significant sights, you'll then jump into the explaining the sights so that you can dismiss the pressure.
Yeah.
Oh look, I am pressured by what I've seen, either towards sensuality or towards being repulsed by it. But see, it's just the eye, the sights, and then consciousness comes and stuff. Thus, this pressure is not really real because these things
It's
are
just
out
a
there.
mechanical process.
No,
that, yeah.
You get to discern eye, sights, and consciousness through
Yeah.
the starting point for you, which is the pressure. That's
Yeah.
your first point of contact. Oh wait, isn't it called contact?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because it is. That's the
Your contact.
origin.
That's the origin. Yeah.
Contacted one feels, contacted one gets to perceive what gets to intend.
Mm-hmm.
Although contact is not on the level of the aggregates of feeling, perception, intention, you realize that everything is sort of taken upside down, and you being pressured by the world, by the senses, by everything else, is the first point.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep saying you have to acknowledge that basis, because otherwise you're just acting out of the idea of what an arahant is for you,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to externally apply it to your situation by dismissing the problem in front of you.
Yeah.
First you need to see the problem, then see that removal of the problem is what arahantship is.
Mm-hmm.
Not like the idea I develop, oh that's what factually arahant is, and now I just have to keep dismissing the problem sufficiently enough until I become an arahant.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, from an arahant point of view, contact is a mistake.
Mm.
Being pressured by things is a mistake. But you are not an arahant, which means your mistake is your
It's
first
always
point.
through the contact, and
Yeah.
whenever you discern pressure and feeling, that contact doesn't disappear.
No,
Doesn't
no,
remain.
no,
It's
of course.
always.
The context of it,
Yeah.
the pressure.
Mm-hmm. And the only way that you can know eyesight and eye consciousness.
Exactly.
So the meeting. So yeah. So in fact, it says the miti sangati is like the
Well,
kind
they're
of
all-
merging of those
Yeah,
three things.
yeah.
That's what contact is.
Yeah.
Or
As in,
pressure,
you
but-
being pressured, the necessary base for that pressure is these three things being there
Yeah.
together, so to speak.
And with the support of that pressure or that contact feeling.
So the only way to understand eye, sights, and consciousness correctly is through the context of that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That is understood through the context of that pressure.
Yeah.
So literally, I don't know, like three of you, for example, are meeting secretly behind my back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about it. So I come there and I see you, I see him, but I don't get the context that you're there with a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That's, if I were to find that out,
Yeah.
suddenly I will see you, I will still see him, same, and him, but in that context.
Yeah.
They're here together now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first point. You need to recognize what the meeting is, and you recognize what the meeting is by what pressures you.
Mm-hmm.
So through the pressure you get to see the basis. Okay, so I am pressured by sights, which is on the level of eyes, which means consciousness is already there.
Mm. Yeah.
So that's what I mean, those three aspects, sights, eyes, sights and consciousness
Yeah.
can only be understood correctly through the context of the pressure that they exhibit on you, and that's the study. That's
So-
how you get to undo the pressure.
So they're only.
Arahant does not become an Arahant, and he does not undo the pressure because he destroys the eye objects, or he pulls his eyes out, or he cancels his consciousness. No. He just fully understands the basis for the pressure, and that's how he doesn't experience the pressure anymore. The basis still remains for as long as the body remains. That's why for an Arahant there's this conscious body left, and name and matter, everything else externally. But if the pressure is seen as a product of eyes, sights processing each other, consciousness
Which are
sparking
already
out of it,
there, independent of the pressure.
exactly, then the pressure will be another natural result of it, and then you wouldn't be able to uproot it. You cannot remove the pressure.
Yeah.
But it's not. The pressure is you being pressured by this basis, by this particular meeting. So unless you start seeing the context of that meeting, it's... Because see, there is no meeting if it's just you. There is no meeting if it's just him. But you coming together determine each other's presence as the meeting.
Yeah.
If I'm unaware of the possibility of the meeting, I won't see that entire domain of your connection. And I'll just think you're just there randomly or individually.
But am I right in saying it's like, it seems this is slightly different from that idea than us meeting, because...
Well, I'm
No,
trying to simplify.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying it's not helpful, but like the thing with, so there's the eye, the sights and eye consciousness. They can
only be understood on the basis of the meeting.
Then it's not that they come first, then they meet.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely.
It's like
yeah.
no, there's this meeting, and within that, I can see there's this thing.
No,
called an
definitely,
eye.
definitely. I'm just trying to for somebody who is, I mean, it's not an easy thing to understand. So
Yes.
you have to simplify in the external components, so to speak.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, the only way you can know the eye or sights or consciousness is on the basis of that meeting.
That's right. Yeah.
So and
it's
that
almost
was
like you can only know me and you because of the meeting.
because of the meeting. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you keep thinking like that, then any notion of I independent of the meeting,
Yes.
Objects independent of the meeting, consciousness independent of the meeting will be seen as a wrong view.
Yes.
Because it cannot be independent of the
Can't
meeting.
possibly
The
be.
only way you can even think it abstractly is on account of it being met already.
Yes. This meeting. This
exactly.
having already.
So that's what I mean. Even your abstraction will be accurate if you remove the wrong views. You don't need to stop thinking or something. No, you just will stop misconceiving things even in your abstraction.
Because they're always rooted in the current contact.
Yeah, in the current pressure, in the current basis of the experience as a whole. So that's what I mean. You can be thinking about the eyes, the object, the consciousness, and try to apply it to yourself, but it simply does not start on the right basis, and because of that it will not be accurate.
Yeah.
First you want to find the pressure.
Yeah.
Where is the emotional weight for you? Don't take things you don't care about. Find things you care about. Through those things you can only discern I and objects and consciousness. And that's why in the suttas when the Buddha asks, monks, do you regard I to be yours? No, sir. Do you regard objects to be yours? No, sir. It's already taken for granted that they only can see these things through the right basis.
Yeah.
Their right view has been developed.
Yeah.
They don't have the external assumption of the I, the objects.
Yeah.
But when people don't know the right basis, the right order, then they think, oh yeah, I don't think I is mine. I don't think objects, as in objects I don't care about are obviously not mine.
Yes.
I don't feel any pressure on account of it.
Yeah.
So that's basically jumping the gun, so to speak. Yeah, that's true in the end for an Arahant, but you want to find things that are dear to you, the objects that you do depend upon emotionally, and then start contemplating the suttas the way they said. So within that which is dear to you, oh, I do see this is dear to me, so how can I say the eye is not mine, the objects are not mine, when if they were to go, I'd be upset. And anything, like it's not a thing set in stone that it's always same things that are dear to all people. Some people can delight in something that other people completely have no problem letting go of. And that's why we could never prescribe everybody should be a forest dweller, or everybody must never go to the forest, or everybody, because it depends. Depends where your pressure is.
Yeah. And the papanca, the previous proliferations, the kind of what's already been built up.
Yeah, it's not about undoing that or trying to reroute.
Mm-hmm.
It's about uprooting the necessary basis.
Mm-hmm.
Then everything else is left. So that's what I mean. Like even the preferences, to some extent, preferences based upon sensuality, for example, you uproot the sensuality, the dried up, petrified directions of your preferences are still there. That's why arahants could remember things of unwholesome nature in the past.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I used to act out of fear, and I was hiding in my palace because I was fearing for my life, and who knows what else he was doing on account of their fear. He remembers that, but he feels none of it, because he has removed the basis of that fear, that dependence on how he felt, trying to protect, shelter himself from the unpleasant feelings. But it doesn't mean that he literally became like a white board. There's no memory, no recollection, no trace of anything. No, you know, oh, I used to really delight in this. Now, obviously, I find it disgusting. But he remembers the extent of delight, the extent of the perception that grew as a result of him engaging even more with the meaning of it that was pressuring him. So removal of papanca does not remove the perception. Removal of papanca does not remove your thoughts.
So actually, yeah, that's the. So with the support of the contact, or the support of the pressure, there's feeling. What one feels, one perceives.
What perceives,
what one
intends
perceives,
about.
one thinks about. What one thinks about, one proliferates. What one proliferates, because of that.
But it's all, see, within the pressure.
Yeah,
The basis of the pressure remains holding all of these further factors that the Buddha describes. So it's not that they cease once the next factor comes.
Yeah.
They're all within the pressure. You remove the pressure, there is no more growth of the pressure through your thinking and perceiving and revolving around it.
Yeah, if there's no pressure, there's no feeling. If there's no feeling, there's no perceiving. There's no perceiving, there's no thinking about.
Right.
There's no thinking about, there's no proliferation. What one proliferates, because of that, proliferated perceptions and concepts are in play for a man in terms of sights that he can be conscious of, with the eye in the past, in the future, in the present. And then the same for ears and sounds.
So I think you could sum that up by saying it's not about thinking about what you perceive that it's a problem. It's about thinking about what you perceived on account of being pressured by it. That's the problem. So thinking out of the pressure is the problem.
Yeah.
Not about what you think and what movements your mind makes. It's the fact that you're giving into the pressure and you want to get rid of the pressure through thoughts and figuring it out.
Or thinking while that pressure is there, can you say? But that pressure is only there because you don't
Well,
understand
yeah,
what the pressure
you
is.
have the thoughts as a result of the pressure, but that's one thing.
Yeah.
But as the Buddha said, you don't delight
Yes.
in the thought of sensuality, you don't entertain it, you don't engage with it.
But then that would mean
Thought of
there's no pressure.
sensuality is already pressure.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you
Keep delighting in it,
Yeah.
you're then proliferating the pressure.
Yeah.
You're making it worse, so to speak. Not if you don't have the thought at all. You can't choose that. Thought is there as a result of the pressure, sure.
Yeah.
But you realize that's not up to me. Up to me is whether I keep feeding the pressure. Because if you stop feeding the pressure will dissolve.
Yes.
But you can't just choose to cancel the pressure by choosing to cancel the thought. Because that's another thought rooted in the same pressure. So when people say, too much thinking results in pain, no. Too much trying to escape the pressure results in more pressure. Because your wanting to escape pressure is rooted in that pressure. You wouldn't do so if you're not pressured.
Yeah.
So it's actually, you want to acknowledge the pressure and then learn how not to be pressured while pressure is there. That's why sense restraint needs to come first. That already enables you to endure the discomfort to some extent. So too much thinking is not the problem.
Learning how to...
Too much acting out of pressure is the problem.
Yeah. Learning how to not be pressured by the pressure
is the way out of pressure.
If you do that, there is no pressure.
Yeah. You won't be pressured. Thus,
Yeah,
there is no pressure anymore.
Yeah. If I'm not pressured by the pressure,
But if you
there
start,
is no pressure.
if you start saying,
That's not pressure anymore.
if you start saying there's no pressure,
Okay.
as in stop thinking,
Yeah.
stop the pressure. You do that out of the pressure. So you act out of pressure means you feed the pressure.
Yeah, but it has to be knowing that you're free.
So first you have to acknowledge the pressure.
Yeah.
you have to acknowledge the thinking and realize that that's not the problem.
Yeah.
Sensual perceptions are not the problem. Acting out of those is the problem.
Yeah.
But you act out of
Even
those because you
mentally.
can't endure those perceptions for what they are. So you give in to the pressure. And by giving into the pressure, you're pressured by definition of it. So you have to acknowledge it and allow it to be, allow it to endure. And that's how you then learn how not to be bothered by its endurance, by its presence. And that's how it will wither away. You stop engaging with it.
Yeah.
You stop feeding it.
Just allow it to do what it does. So it goes through all the senses, that same sort of formula. And then there's just a slight bit. Friends, when there is an eye, when there are sights, when there is eye consciousness, that the manifestation of pressure will be discerned, that is possible. When there is the manifestation of pressure, that the manifestation of feeling will be discerned, that is possible. When there is the manifestation of feeling, that the manifestation of perception will be discerned, that is possible. When
You can also say the same to craving.
okay.
If there is no manifestation of feeling, there is nothing to crave for or against.
Yeah, okay. But I think that
So you remove the
theme
pressure,
is-
you remove pressure being felt. You remove the pressure, you remove that pressure being felt, being craved against or for it. So you remove the pressure, you remove the suffering. Because by removing the craving in regard to pressure, there is no suffering anymore. Because that's what suffering is. It's not in the eye, the object's not in the consciousness.
Yeah.
It's in you revolving around the pressure that you're under.
But I think that's why this suit is sort of unusual, or like because it brings in the notion of perception to the kind of normal paticca.
Yeah, I think it's just another way of describing. Because there is the other paticca that after craving goes into taking up the rods and fighting and killing each other and leaves all the other factors out.
Yeah. So when there is the manifestation of perception, that the manifestation of thinking will be discerned, that is possible. When there is the manifestation of thinking, that the manifestation of proliferated perceptions and concepts being in play will be discerned, that is possible. And the same for the other senses.
So that's the point there is, again, it's not that the thing or things' perceptions grow. The proliferation is the meaning of those perceptions. So say again, back onto the original example, I show you a watch. Means nothing to you and you don't have any need for it. But then you get a need for a watch. See, the perception of the same watch, he didn't change the color or increase its size.
Yeah.
The perception is identical, but it means more. It has more weight now because there is a certain need that can be met by that. Now imagine you then really, really become dependent on knowing the time at every given moment. So you're really dependent on having a watch, and now that watch is even more meaningful to you. Then you find out maybe that it's also a very expensive watch. Then you also find out it was owned by the King of England or something like that. So it's extra valuable to all other people and it's yours. Yet it's the same perception of the same watch. Nothing has changed, yet everything has changed. And that's also when people have like difficulties understanding an arahant. Thinking like, he stops perceiving and he just flies in the air. No. So externally, nothing has changed. Internally, everything has changed. Because you realize that's what everything is. Whether it's pressure or non-pressure determines everything. Whether you're putujana or an arahant. Whether you're with the grain of the pressure or against the grain of the pressure. As in, not pressured.
Yeah, then he goes on to describe the arahats. So friends, when there isn't an eye, when there aren't sights, when there isn't eye consciousness, that the manifestation of pressure will be discerned, that isn't possible.
And you might wonder, so why didn't the Buddha then just stay and stick with the pressure? Because it's your starting point for practice, it's the first point of contact. Why did he tell
go
you
all
what
the
the
way to-
pressure is dependent upon.
Oh, okay.
What do you think that is? Why did the Buddha point at the necessary basis for the pressure that is your first point? Pressure is your first point. Why did he point
Pressure.
out that the necessary basis for it?
Because you can only undermine that necessary basis for everything, the pressure,
You
By
can only
seeing that
undermine the
that's-
pressure
by seeing that is also, that's determined.
exactly by seeing that it doesn't depend on you,
Yeah.
your choice, your attention.
Yeah.
By seeing that subjected to something that's not in your control. Thus, you being pressured is equally subjected to that basis that's not in your control.
So everything that you
But that's why if you
experience-
think, that's why the only intelligible relationship with I, objects and consciousness is to be seen as a necessary basis for that which is experienced. So you don't experience I, objects and consciousness separately.
Mm.
You only get to discern it through the first point, which is the pressure. There is no lower point than the pressure.
Yeah.
So that's the sankhara in its
Isn't
definition.
that Anguttara Nikaya Sutta that says, like, the other one, all things converge on feeling, and what's the thing about contact there?
Oh yes, yes.
That is-
they're directed by contact or something like that.
Yeah, I can't
Governed by
remember- I can't-
mindfulness,
Yeah, I can't remember.
converge upon feeling, revolve around the contact or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's Vicky Bow translation, but yeah, something like. But basically, yeah, everything has to all come.
No, that's what I mean.
Through
You cannot
contact.
go below the
Yeah.
contact
Yeah,
because that means you won't be contacted.
Yeah.
But if you're going below, it means that is what contacts you. So
Yeah.
you're always within the framework, within the literally the container of the contact,
Yeah.
of the pressure. And I prefer pressure because contact is impersonal. Oh, look,
Yes.
that's contact. See, that's already pressure, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you want to find like
Emotional.
not like exactly like emotionally disinterest context, like because just I happen to engage with it. No, it's the emotional contact, which means emotional pressure.
Yeah.
So the Buddha described the necessary basis for pressure because that's the only way you can really understand and get the right perspective on that pressure and thus stop being pressured by it.
Mhm.
Not because you need to walk out of the pressure into the necessary basis for it and somehow free yourself from the pressure. That's impossible.
Yeah.
So the sankharas, for the necessary pressure that you're experiencing, for the first point, the bottom is the pressure, the sankharas are basically the right context how you should regard the same pressure.
Yeah. They can only be. Yeah. They're only
So
part of
understanding the pressure is only up by understanding what is determined by. Because at the moment you see pressure, pressure's mine. Thus acting out of pressure, it's also mine. It's also for the purpose of what I want to do and so on. But by seeing pressure as actually not being in your control, not being rooted in, already you're learning its correct nature. And by doing so, already you're less affected by that pressure.
Mhm.
And is it conceivable to act out of pressure if you're not pressured?
No.
Even if you act towards those things,
You're acting, but that's
would
not
that
the
act
same
be
thing.
rooted in the
Yeah.
pressure if you don't feel the pressure?
Yeah.
Impossible.
And that's
And that's how Arahant can still act.
And that's why there'll be no feeling. There will
Yeah.
be no.
Exactly. No pressured feeling.
Yeah.
That's the point. And that's how Arahant can still choose and prefer. I don't like this.
So in
Tell this person to
Yeah.
go away. He's disagreeable.
Yes.
He's a fool. I don't want to spend my time with him. Oh, but Arahant is, he must not discriminate.
Yeah.
No. He can discriminate. None of his discrimination will be rooted in being pressured by the discrimination.
Yeah. So in one sense, you can say.
And
that
if
there
you
are-
actually make the effort and read the origin stories for the, as in not you but the audience, whoever is interested in this, about the rules, you'll see
the video, yeah,
how
yeah.
discriminative the Buddha was,
Yeah.
and even the language he used.
Yeah.
You would think. I remember first time I read it because you get this as a layman, this idea Arahant basically just this sort of energy of everything and nothing. And then you start reading this, like when the Buddha starts like blasting the monks who misbehaved.
And
And
the foolish man,
like,
Mogapura, is that?
better you should better use the snake's mouth and whatnot. Like,
Yeah.
You think, how can an Arahant speak like that?
Yeah.
Because you can't fathom anything in between.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you can, because it's a factual, right thing to say. And none of that is rooted in the pressure. The Buddha is not emotionally disturbed on account of monks doing what he says or monks not doing what he says. But he's still, this is disagreeable, this is stupid, this is foolish behavior. This is agreeable, this is a good behavior. Now, either way, I'm not affected by it because he's not pressured by it.
Mhm.
And that's also those cases of arahants in the suttas where people, complained about them because the way they were speaking was rude and seemingly conceited and
Yeah.
arrogant, and they were upsetting everybody left and right. They complained to the Buddha and said, no, it's just literally the habits of their speech have left. None of that is rooted in pressure of vanity, pressure of craving,
He
pressure of conceit.
He used to work in a fish yard, and he just used to spend
Yeah.
his time
Or,
just shouting a
or
lot.
the other one was always been born in the higher Brahmin family, and he's just used to talking down to
Yeah,
people.
okay, yeah.
He's like literally the habit of his speech.
Yeah.
So that's why if you judge things simply based on that,
Yes.
nothing like there's nothing else that you can discern within it, yeah, you're missing out completely, and you're not seeing where the problem is. And that's when you will be blaming the eye, the sights, for your pressure, for your papanca. So then you think all I need to do is just stop seeing, and that's how I will approve the papanca of my sights,
Yeah.
the significance of my sights.
I'll get rid of that eye that's got nothing to do with this pressure I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. By getting rid of the basis of this pressure, I will get rid of the pressure. But the only way to know the base of the pressure is through the pressure.
Mm.
So in practice, all you're doing is acting out of pressure, which is what perpetuates the pressure.
Yeah.
The basis doesn't perpetuate the pressure.
Yeah.
Ignorance of the basis perpetuates the pressure. How can you know the basis if you destroy the basis?
Mm.
How can you understand the eye if you lose your eyes and sights? So, better practice until it's too late. Otherwise, if pressure were truly rooted in those things, as a pressure that pressures you, death would be an arahantship for everyone.
Mm, yeah.
Destruction of the senses would be a nibbana, but
Yeah.
that's not the case.
Yeah.
So a term for proliferation, you could use pressure as well, or
Well, no, pressure, proliferation is a result of acting out of pressure.
acting out.
See, you're pressured by
Mhm.
finding something that will meet your need. In other words, your needs of, as I gave the example of needing the watch to see the time,
Mhm.
is already rooted in how you feel about it. And
Mhm.
you're already to some degree acting towards comfort, towards
Mhm.
pleasant feeling. So you need, oh, this item can meet that purpose, so that item becomes more significant.
Mhm.
And the next time you perceive that item, you already perceive it with that significance. You don't need to remind yourself, wait, what is this for? No, next time you see the watch, especially if the purpose, emotional need is still there, any watch you see will be seen with more significance because that's what you need it for.
You've been increasing the value of this watch.
Yes,
to
within
that
the same
proliferation.
perception of the same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the point when attending to the contact, it's like people, like you said, people take what's impersonal and they attend to these impersonal phenomena, and they're like, oh, look at me, I'm becoming free from
Sure,
it. But
sure. Yeah, you just pick the impersonal
Mhm.
ones and think that they will overwhelm whatever personally you're taking.
But you need to be looking where the conceit is, the appropriation.
You need to find the personal ones, and then you'll realize that any correct form of practicing impersonal perceptions can only be done so within the framework of personal. So it's not about replacing personal with impersonal, it's about seeing impersonal through the personal. That's the definition of sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe sankhara dukkha, sabbe dhamma anatta. But for most people it's sabbe dhamma anicca, sabbe dhamma dukkha, sabbe dhamma anatta. Everything is impermanent, everything is everything is unpleasant, everything is not self. No. Necessary basis is impermanent, necessary basis is unpleasant. Your ownership is not your own. So, if you ignore the basis of ownership as a starting point, you'll be looking at these random things and just trying to psychologize the anicca and re-explain it to you.
Mhm.
So it's the other way around. You need to reverse the picture by taking up what's first for you. And what's first for you is me, my sense of ownership, what pressures me, emotional need, emotional dependence. And then within that emotionally, so take a person that's dear to you. Without ignoring the fact that they're dear to you, without stopping to, ceasing to feel the dearness, so to speak, think about their impermanence and see how you're going to feel about it.
It's possible to attend to that proliferation but not be beset by it. Like if you have,
What do you mean by attending to it?
like, you know, proliferation's occurring, that you can.
Proliferation is not occurring.
Mhm.
It's already occurred.
It's
It's
already
already
occurred.
the basis upon which you can either choose to act or restrain for.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like, oh, proliferation is a process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I from before, I guess, like I would go to these places. They would speak about proliferation.
Yeah, people, as I
"Stop
said, they
proliferating,
assume
stop thinking."
proliferation
Yeah.
to be on the level of your mental activity. So stop that, stop proliferating. No, it's on the level of meaning and pressure of things that they exhibit over you. So, for example, things that you have not emotionally engaged with, they have not proliferated for you. But as I said, you start cultivating, entertaining, welcoming, acting out of a certain emotional engagement with the same thing, same perception of the same thing. That emotional dependence will grow.
So the things that move you, the things that you're emotionally moved by,
Things that matter to you.
they have already undergone. There is this proliferation in regard to that thing.
Yeah. Because
already
otherwise
there.
nothing would matter to you.
And that's to do with the meaning of that thing. It's not to do with anything I'm doing right now.
Exactly. So whatever you're doing right now will be rooted in that meaning.
Exactly, yeah.
So you trying to stop your thinking because you think that that's how you stop a papanca, basically, is like saying, oh, so I'll stop thinking about the pressure because that's how I won't be pressured, and the only reason I want to do this is because I'm pressured. You want to stop thinking about the pressure because you're already pressured by the unpleasantness of it. So how do you stop thinking? By thinking about it. So it's a contradiction in terms. Can you not think? Don't have any thoughts in your mind now. That's a thought in your mind. I must not have any thoughts in my mind. So it's utterly futile, like completely. If you stop and think about it, no pun intended, this is impossible. It's impossible. So you blaming the result of pressure for the pressure means ignoring where the pressure is. Oh, I'm not pressured. It's only when I think about the pressure I'm pressured. So I stop thinking about the pressure, that will free me from pressure. In other words, I'll ignore the pressure to be free from pressure. And that's the definition of avijja. Out of discomfort, you refuse to address things. Out of discomfort, you ignore them.
Ignorance.
Out of discomfort, you turn a blind eye.
It's like throughout my day or even week or throughout my experiences, it would be like, okay, there will be certain kinds of thoughts, either about food or hunger or a certain experience I would like to re-experience, but I don't like the time with that. Like if I were to think about that right now, but I don't feel any pressure in regard to that. But then when there's a certain discomfort that happens to me, and then there's the pressure.
And that's exactly the difference that people will remain unaware of for as long as they think that the pressure is in the perception, that papanca is in the perception. It's not. It's in regard to it, but it's not perceived. It's the meaning of what you perceive. So see, you have a random thought about a food, and it might be because you're factually hungry, but there is no pressure to eat. You just had the thought about a food, and there's no problem with that thought. Then on another occasion, you have a thought about a food because you're just full of sensuality and sensual craving. You're not even hungry, yet you're now pressured. So in other words, hunger will not pressure you towards food as much as your craving will pressure you towards food. Hunger and food is just out there. And you will never differentiate that, eating for the sake of hunger and eating for the sake of sensuality, for as long as you blame the thoughts of food for sensuality, for proliferation. So that's what I mean. First you need to accept the fact that the mind is thinking about this, and then you can see whether you're thinking about it out of compulsive pressure or out of factual necessity or like a spontaneous arising of those thoughts. But if every thought means pressure, every thought means proliferation, every thought must be stopped, you'll never see the whole domain of middle way. You'll be blaming thoughts and trying to cancel them. Or ignoring them. Yeah. Or distracting yourself from it.
Distracting.
So that's what I mean. Oh, they're thoughts of food. I must stop it. No. I must see whether this is rooted, as we say, in wholesome or rooted in unwholesome. That's what Buddha said. Whatever you know to be unwholesome, abandon it. As in, whatever you know that it's rooted in unwholesome, that is rooted in pressure, don't cultivate it, don't entertain it, don't delight in it, as he said. That's how you abandon it. That's how you stop feeding it. That doesn't mean if you uproot craving for food, doesn't mean you'll stop eating for the rest of your life. Doesn't mean you'll be unaware of the preferential taste, so to speak. But none of it will be rooted in you craving, being pressured towards that food, and consequently being upset on account of not getting it, or being bothered on account of not getting enough of it. So that's what I mean. The only way you can discern whether you're acting under pressure or not is to first see what acting is occurring, what thoughts are there.
And
So sometimes it's bad to think about food, but not because of the thoughts of food, but because it's rooted in the pressure. And sometimes it's not bad to think about food, because you won't be rooted in the pressure. But if all you can see is thoughts of food, you'll never see where they're rooted. You'll never see where the pressure is. Means you'll never see where the Dhamma is in the practice.
And if you can't see in that direction, you'll never see that
Well, you never get the
Pressure.
right view.
that pressure is dependent on something that
Yeah, exactly.
you don't
exactly.
have any control
Yeah.
over.